Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network.
'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven.
A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at upenradio.com.
Hello and welcome to the Larry Yates Is Show. This is not Larry Yates. He continues to be on the road, but he left in his place the awesome, magnificent Reverend Carolyn Wilkins. At least they tell me that. And this is the Larry Yates Is Show. We're so happy to have you back again. Those of you who are our listening audience, we appreciate you taking the time to tune in. And we're going to continue the series, How Did We Get Here? Today, in particular, we're going to talk about stress and anxiety. Everywhere I turn, I hear people saying more and more that they are stressed. In fact, there was a recent report that was shown in the last day or so that said that there had been a substantial increase in anxiety in this country. And unfortunately, the largest increase is amongst our youth. That's not good news. So I'd like to talk about what got us here. Now, some of you may say, I already know the answer. I already know it's a one-word answer, but that's not the whole truth. And we'll get into that in a moment. But before we start a conversation about stress and anxiety, I'd like to share some good news. I think I want to share some good news. I actually went to the newspaper today, and I searched and I searched. I looked at the New York Times, the Washington Post, USA Today, and they weren't reporting much good news. So I went to the entertainment pages, and I said, at least I can find something there. And of course, there were things about plays, movies, dancing, art galleries, museums, and I took a breath of fresh air. I said, I need to go to this page more often, because when you go to the front page of the news, there's very little good news, no matter what paper you're looking at. And that, I believe, is one of the reasons that we're feeling more anxious. That we start our day off with news from the White House, news from around the world, and we're not focused on what is good and pleasant and monumental in our lives. So I'm going to say that I woke up this morning really honoring the fact that the birds are here. We're hearing the chirps and the sounds of birds. Outside of my window, a big crow came flying into one of the trees, and I haven't seen big crows in a while, so I guess they go away for the winter because it's been a little cold here. And that is what is good and wonderful, is that we really are surrounded by nature everywhere. If you look around, you'll start seeing ants come out. There are little flies and other things, flying creatures. And there's always a reminder that we're not the only ones in this world. One of the news shows today showed a successful breeding of one of the Indian elephants, that they are one of the dying breeds, but in one of the zoos, they were able to bring two elephants together in the U.S., and the female elephant is pregnant. So that's good news. But guess what? It takes 22 months for a baby elephant to be born. So it's going to be a while before they know what's actually going on. But I wanted to share that good news because it's there if you look for it. And I encourage you to actually start looking for good news. So I'm going to take a turn and go back to this topic. How did we get here? Increased stress and anxiety. You know, I realize that there are actual mental causes for stress and worry. In addition to the news, we have traffic. There's traffic from drivers, from trucks, from buses, and depending on the city you're in, there's construction going on in different places. Since there's such a boom in development of buildings, there are a lot more construction cars on the streets and on the highways. So if you're trying to get someplace, I encourage you to leave early because you may not get there on time if you are assuming it's going to be the regular traffic. And of course, because we're in Southern California and Los Angeles, to be exact, Los Angeles has, I think we're number one, if not in the top 5 of traffic in the U.S. So bumper to bumper wherever we're going. Traffic. Living expenses are at an all-time high. And whether you own the place that you're in or you're renting or considering moving, no matter what your situation is, there are items that will stress you just a little bit because there doesn't seem to be an end in sight. Although we know this happened about 15 years ago where there was a big boom in the housing market and then there was a crash. So some of you may be anxious because your property value is going up, and some of you may be anxious because the property value is going down. But living expenses is part of it, as well as health challenges, the cost of health. There are more things going on in relationship to sickness, airborne diseases, and other health situations. Our population is aging, so as you're looking around, you may see more people who are older. They're getting along well, but they may require more support from our hospital system. And then there are our children. Our children are doing all sorts of things. They're active in many programs. There was a recent conversation about young boys playing football, and that the fact they don't always wear protective gear, the helmets are not protecting them from cranial damage. And if they're encouraging young people not to play football until they're 12, because what's happening is banging and hitting and all the things that happens in touch football and regular football is impacting the growth and the correct growth of the brain and the cranium for young men. So I'm not trying to lay on all the bad news. I'm just saying that you might be stressed because if you're a parent, your child may want to play football and you're concerned about the impact of them playing football. And then they get stressed and upset because they're not doing what their friends are doing. So they're all different manners and ways that we are affected. There are also physical causes of anxiety. It occurs, according to Psychology Today, anxiety occurs because the brain is unable to properly produce and regulate neurotransmitters. And basically, the stress hormone levels become elevated, and the brain is unable to produce the proper amounts of these hormone levels, which tell the brain to slow down. So, while we may have external forces that are maybe creating the environment, it is our own internal brain and reaction that creates the stress. What our eyes see, our brain translates. And it either tells us to take action, that it's okay, or to slow down. So we're not getting the signal, the proper signal that says slow down. And we will be able to look at this a little bit later when I have 7 tips for slowing down. But from a physical standpoint, when we look at what's going on with us, why is there additional stress, it comes based on things that are impacting you. And it may be caused by poor diet, genetics, excess stress, or another number of causes. I hate to bring up diet because we do like to eat what we like to eat. And many of us really enjoy sugar products, crunchy products, chips, pretzels, popcorn, things that from our childhood were associated with fun and games. But it's clear to me as we go on this journey of health, it's important for us to handle our health in a different way. So I'm going to first look at a couple of psychological approaches to stress. And this again was from Psychology Today, and it talked about 3 ways to look at stress and deal with stress. First is to think about what you are thinking. That sounds very strange. But sometimes do you catch yourself thinking about something and you wonder, how did I get there? Why am I thinking about this? You may be in a room watching a TV show and all of a sudden your mind wanders and you're at a game or a date or something, or having an argument with a spouse or a partner in your mind, and you're not even sure how you got there. So think about what you're thinking about is actually an important factor. And it goes back to one of the biblical sayings, which from Proverbs is, as he thinketh within himself, so is he. As she thinketh within herself, so is she. So think about what you're thinking about, and you have the erase or the pause button. So if you find yourself going to an argument you had with someone earlier, you're home, it's 8 o'clock at night, and you may have been bothered by someone at work at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If you find yourself still thinking about it, give yourself permission to let it go, because there's nothing you can do about it in that moment. And the best release of stress is to let go of what you're thinking about. A second factor associated with this psychological thing is to accept your anxious feelings. Now, you don't often hear that. But when I teach young people about emotional intelligence, I share with them that it's okay to have emotions. We all have them. That's one thing we have in common. One, at some point, we're happy, we're sad, we're joyful, we're anxious, we're moody. Sometimes we feel blue. Sometimes we feel a little tentative. Sometimes we feel sad. Other times we just don't want to be bothered. But it's okay. It's actually okay to have all of those feelings. And what often gets in the way is that we have the feelings, we try to hide the feelings, and we keep trying to hide. And as a result of that, we wind up bursting open when somebody says something to us because we've been holding it all in. But it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to be joyful. It's okay to be angry. What's not okay is to be responsive with those feelings and act out with somebody else. So I'll give you an example. If you are anxious and you have feelings about stress and anxiety with someone that you live with, it would be better if you took a chill pill, allowed yourself to have the feelings, but go maybe sit someplace with music or something else to allow yourself to just let those feelings go. Because I know that you're all intelligent and recognize if you approach somebody when you're in a state of anger, what you're going to get back is not going to be what you wanted. If you wanted an apology, you're probably just going to escalate the situation. If you wanted someone to understand you better, they're not going to understand you when your anger is high. If you want someone to do something for you, I know that you realize that it's much easier to get somebody to do something for you if you are pleasant to them and cooperative rather than demanding. But part of the way we've been taught is to act a certain way. And there are actually movies that are made that show people getting bigger, the green giant and all these people, when they get angry, they get bigger. Popeye, his arms pop out. And that's supposed to strengthen them. But it only may be a physical change. It is not a change in mentality or consciousness or a way of being. So this second one is accept your anxious feelings. And it moves right into the third recommendation is engage the problem. Let me repeat. Engage the problem. This is instead of engaging the feeling. So I'll go back to the example. If you have a problem with someone and you had an earlier conversation with them and you didn't agree and you wanted it to be a certain way because you just wanted it to be your way because you thought it was a better idea and the person did not agree and you spend the afternoon thinking about it. What could you have said differently? What could you have done differently? And the intent in the situation is all about correcting the situation by having them agree with you. So we want to first think about what you're thinking about. So if you're upset with someone because they didn't agree with you and you keep thinking about what you said or what they said, you'll find that that doesn't take you any further. It just keeps you in the problem. The second thing is act upon your anxious feelings or accept your anxious feelings. And if that made you frustrated, you really should ask yourself, why am I frustrated when somebody doesn't agree with me? That may be a clue to how you're acting in the world. Because it really would be insane if you believed that everybody's going to agree with you. In fact, statistically, Even if half the people agreed with you, you'd be ahead of the game. But often, because people have their own perspective on how they want to see things, the probability of people agreeing with you is probably down to maybe 10 to 15%. If you honored that you're only going to get 1 in 10 people agreeing with you, it would actually lower your sense of anxiety, because you'd say, oh, well, there's one down. In fact, when you're in sales and you're being taught sales, no matter what company it is, they often tell you the same statistic, that you're only going to get 1 in 20. Now, that means if you make 100 calls for the day, you're only going to get 1 sale or yes. It may not even be a sale, but it's a yes to the next step. And for some people starting out, if you're making 100 calls and you only get 5 people to respond positively, you may think you're failing. But actually, that is the norm, that people do not say yes to most things. They don't say yes to what you're trying to sell them. They don't say yes to what you're trying to get them to do. And if you go in with that knowledge, then you'll actually come out successful. I've been in sales, and it always said, keep a smile on your face and know after the first one, you've only got a few more to go. So as you go through this process and recognize and add to your own understanding that everyone is not going to agree with you and that you should honor their opinion. And in fact, it could be a point of conversation. Instead of trying to get your way, do you ever take a moment and just say, why is that important to you? Or, I hear what you're saying. Tell me more about that. Because the more you do that, the more you'll actually learn about the other person, and it will minimize and limit the discord in any relationship, because by asking more about that person, what matters to them, they'll start hearing you better. With that note, we're going to take a brief pause. And I want you to know that these psychological resources will help you diffuse the situation, finesse it, allow you to approach things, and manage your fears, anxieties in relationship to dealing with other people. So when we come back, we're going to talk about some other situations, what's going on with our teens and our youth, and 7 things to combat anxiety.
I was inside your soul the day that you appeared, my love. Contain your heart, but will you remember me? This earth you walk upon, it's holy. Breath you breathe, it's mine. I'm loving you, oh, but will you remember me when the river's rising and the seas are not calm, and the peace you felt on yesterday, today it's nowhere to be found, and you pray to be free, and for the burdens to subside. gave you fine. Oh, I like your way. You see, I'm here. Oh, I'm right where you are. Oh, but will you remember? Will you remember me? Will you remember me? You see, I'm your friend. I'm your friend. Yes, I'm your friend. When the river's rising, I'll be your friend. I'm your friend. Remember me. Remember me. When the river's rising, remember me. Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. Remember me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Larry Yates Is Is show. This is Reverend Carolyn Wilkins sitting in for the powerful Larry Yates, who is the host, producer, and creative person behind the Larry Yates Is Is show. A shout out to Larry as he is dealing with a friend, and we wish him well in the work that he's doing right now. But I'd like to say, when we come back to this idea, the topic today is how did we get here? Stress and anxiety. And the premise that I talked about earlier today was that the nation is experiencing more anxiety than it ever has. Our young people are being affected by anxiety as well as our elders. So I want to have a conversation today to really just look at what is going on and what can we do. The concern that I have is with our youth because they are connected online 24/7 almost. And what is on our TVs, our computers, the websites, the news is not good news most of the time. And if that's what you're looking at, it's hard to avoid what's going on. Our young people, though, are dealing with stress in general. How you get into college. I was with someone the other day, and this made me laugh and sad at the same time. And they have a child who is getting ready to go to kindergarten. And they had interviews for going to special kindergarten class. And it took several weeks for them to schedule appointments, to meet with people about it. And I don't think I had that many appointments for me getting into college. Going to school was very simple. We lived in a certain neighborhood. You went to the school that was closest to where your address was, and that was it. But the world is different today, and parents are evaluating different schools from nursery school, elementary school, middle school, and high school, even before you get to college. So my hats are off to all the parents who are dealing with the stress that comes with choosing a school. But now that the children are in school, guess who has the stress? They do. Because as they are positioned in schools that are more demanding, then they are dealing with higher expectation. When you have all of the expectation from getting into the school and you had to do tests and other things, it means that there's a higher level expected of you, and there are people there that have as higher skills as you do. The good news is when you went to a public school in regular time that, there was a span, there was a wide range of skills and capabilities. So there would be some people that weren't quite as smart, some that were super smart, some that were, in the middle. But at least you got a range of what was going on. As you are putting your young people into these high achieving, high opportunity situations, then it is really narrowing the diversity in the place. Now, they may have diversity from a color, sex, race standpoint, but they may not have diversity of opinions because to get into the schools, you have to follow and pass certain tests. So now they're there. What happens? Each day they come home with a bigger bag full of homework. I watch kids on the street coming home, and they're on the buses and in cars, and their backpack is bigger than they are. I saw one little girl who had to be about 7, and somebody had to help her put the backpack on. All of this is leading to more homework, more anxiety, more stress, more tests. And right now, many of our high school students are going through exams, advanced placement exams, college exams, and all of you are probably going through finals because we're going through the end of the year. So I encourage you to pay attention to your young people. This isn't everyday time, it's extraordinary time. Give them an extra moment, listen, and pay attention, because stress in their life can lead to something more consequential than we would like to imagine. In today's world, and I saw the report that stress is increasing, it also means that their anxiety is increasing from bullying, from challenges with work, from people who are questioning who they are, their sexual persuasion, what their interests are. And young people are being affected by drugs and alcohol. So there are a lot of things coming to them. They have the pressure of sex, where they're being encouraged to have sex at much earlier ages than happened a couple of decades ago. So we want to be open, aware, and available for our young people. The sad news is that as a result of this increased stress and anxiety, our young people are attempting to take their lives. They haven't been given all the skills to cope with these challenges, and as a result, teen suicide is up. I'm having this conversation today because it's National Mental Health Month. And I'd like to call attention to what's going on, especially for our young people, so that you can understand some of the signs of mental health. And there's information on the websites. Just go to your Department of Mental Health, and you'll have information that you can look at that will help you understand what are the signs of stress. There are 5 signs of stress. What are the signs of potential suicide? There are courses there that show what non-suicidal self-injury are. Young people are cutting themselves, they're scratching themselves, they're doing other things. There's cyberbullying, which I'm sure you understand that people are posting things. They're doing it through Instagram, doing it through emails and texts of cyberbullying. So there are ways to prevent that. There is bullying. There's also depression. And there are issues associated with special interest groups like the LGBTQ community. Please be aware of all of these different areas, and there are courses in the background that can assist you. There are courses for educators, and there are also courses for parents that will help you get there. We want to help prevent youth suicide and increase student mental well-being. And there are signs for you to know. So there are 3 things I'm going to share with you. Pain is not always obvious if you're trying to understand young people and these mental health situations. So every day in California in particular, friends, family, and coworkers struggle with emotional pain. For some, it's difficult to talk about the pain and thoughts of suicide and the need for help. Though the warning signs can be subtle, they're there. And I want you to know that there are signs. And by recognizing these signs, knowing how to start a conversation, and where to turn for help, you have the power to make a difference. You have the power to save a life. So first, know the signs. Pain isn't obvious. But most suicidal people show some signs that they are thinking about suicide. If you see even one warning sign, stop in and speak up. Take the time to learn what to do now so you're ready to be there for training and for helping a friend or a loved one, because it really matters. And the warning signs, we have them on the screen, and you're welcome to take an image of that and to talk about it. But it includes substance abuse, lying, their changing behavior, acting in more negative ways, not wanting to talk, senses of isolation. Of course, with teens, that's sometimes difficult to understand because to see the difference of the way they behave normally in isolation. But if your teen is someone who normally has 2 or 3 friends over, and then they go in a room together and want to be quiet, and then all of a sudden it's just that teen by themselves, that's an example of isolation that you should pay attention to. Other feelings are if they seem to feel burdened and overwhelmed, or seem to have a story they can't tell, something they're embarrassed about. So know the signs, and you can make a difference. The second thing I encourage you to do is find the words. Are you thinking of ending your life? Now, when I took training on suicide prevention, I was actually shocked when they said we should ask this question. Because I think the inclination of most people is you don't want to say the word suicide or taking your life, because you think that if they're not thinking of it, then that may push them over the edge. But that is not what our mental health providers tell us. They say to ask the question, are you thinking of ending your life? And I know that there are few phrases as difficult to say to a loved one. But when it comes to suicide prevention, none are more important. This is one of the ways to get the conversation started. So let's take a breath. I know that's not easy to even consider, but know that that is something that you should do. And then the third thing is to reach out. You're not alone in helping someone in crisis. There are many resources available for you to assess, treat, and intervene. There are crisis hotlines, there are counselors, the intervention programs and specialists, and many things available. So again, go to your local or county Department of Mental Health, and it will direct you if you just put in stress or teen problems or mental health, and you'll be directed to ways that you can know the signs, find the words, and reach out. So this is an important program. How did we get here? Why are we so stressed? We've talked about some of the reasons we're stressed. We talked about some of the reasons our teens are stressed. So I'm going to spend just a few minutes in sharing some things that you can do to combat stress and anxiety. So let's take a breath first and know that it's not all downhill. The first thing to do, the reason I said take a breath, is you want to learn how to breathe and relearn how to breathe. Most of us are very shallow breathers. So I say relearn to breathe by taking a full breath in. You can keep your mouth open or closed, but breathe deeply 5 to 10 times in a row and breathe out. So it sounds like this. Now that sounds strange because we don't do it most of the time. We take shallow breaths and shallow exhaling. And by doing that, we're not filling our lungs completely. And the air in our lungs is what increases our capacity to breathe. And the air circulates through our bodies that give our bodies the oxygen that's needed. So if you're giving yourself limited fuel, you're not going to operate at your highest level of efficiency. So the first thing to do is breathe. I also, in teaching young people, we teach them about breathing. When you get angry, you stop breathing. When you're really angry, you can sometimes almost choke because you get tense, your body tenses up, your fists may clench, your teeth may clench, and everything gets tightened. So breathing helps you relax. Breathing helps you breathe in the breath of life and breathe out the breath of life. So we teach young people when they're angry and upset, count to 10 and take 10 breaths. Or count to 10 and take 3 breaths if you're breathing deeply. Number 1, breathe. Number 2 is exercise often. Walking is one of those easy things that you can do. And when you exercise, you're giving your body something else to do. It keeps you limber. It stretches you out. And it also releases some of the toxins that you get from clenching and tightening your body. So we encourage you to exercise often. Find new friends. You know the old saying, make new friends and keep the old, one is silver and the other's gold. If you're going through a time of anxiety and stress, take the time to meet somebody new. Or the other option is also in your family. Take the time to learn about somebody you may already know. Because what I have observed is that we have shallow friendships. We don't always invite people over. We don't always ask them to go for a walk in the park with us. To just be still and talk and learn about each other. We have shallow friendships where it's quick hello, quick goodbye. How many of you have friends that you just text, you don't even talk to? So elevate the level of your friendships or gain new friends. Number 4, stay busy and avoid moping. It's especially important for young people, for our teens, and sometimes for the elderly. If you're having a challenge having friends, then sometimes you get a bit mopey. As we get into the elder years, sometimes people have lost some of their close friends, have lost their mate, and it's not always, it doesn't seem as easy to make new friends. But we encourage you to stay busy and stop moping. Avoid moping if you can. Another skill is to create coping options. So what does that mean? There used to be a play, Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope. And it was looking at upset and anger in day-to-day life. But you must create coping options. Don't always run to the refrigerator to get ice cream or to the pantry to get cookies as your coping mechanism. Find other ways that you can cope. Maybe you'll go to the front door or your window and open the window and listen to the birds. Or you can go look at the sunset or the sunrise. How many of you have seen a sunrise in the last 30 days? How many of you have taken the time to see a sunset or to see the moon? Do you know what the moon looks like? Is it a full moon, half moon, quarter moon? The moon is there for us to enjoy. That's one of the things that the indigenous people always teach us, to stay connected with nature. So find other coping mechanisms. There's also your faith, whatever your faith is, whether it's in nature or whether you believe in a divine presence, whether you just believe in the sun and the moon. Practice whatever that faith community encourages you to do, because it will help anxiety and stress. In fact, the Department of Mental Health has said to us that people who are dealing with mental health situations have an increased ability to overcome those if they also involve a faith community. So the Department of Mental Health has addressed that, and in studies that they've done, they know the combination is even more effective. And then the last thing I would like to, well, there are two things. One is that there may be some natural remedies that you can take that will help you become more relaxed. There are different kinds of pills that are not addictive, but they are things that may help you sleep, may help you slow down. And then the last thing is relaxation exercises. I think I said earlier that one of the reasons that we have stress is because our brain is receiving neurotransmissions, and the stress hormone levels become so elevated that the brain can't give us the signals to tell us to slow down. So my last recommendation is to do relaxation exercises. And in those relaxation exercises, whether it's yoga, whether it's stretching, meditation, just sitting by the water. You don't have to formally call it meditation. You can just say, I'm chilling out. But find ways to relax. And when you find ways to relax, it will actually retrain your brain, that you become more attuned to it. It becomes more attuned to you and your stress levels, and it will point you to slowing down when you need to slow down. I'm a big meditator. And when things happen that make me anxious or frustrated or upset, I get signals almost immediately saying, you need to chill. So I don't get overly anxious most of the time because I'm taken to that place that says, slow down, calm down, take a breath. Now, I will say I'm not perfect, so there are times that I do get upset, and we all do. And that's going to happen. But be gentle with yourself. Don't judge yourself too much, because these are times that can affect all men and women. So I'm coming close to the end of the program. I'm so glad that you all joined us today. And I'd like to ask you to take a moment and think about three things. One thing is, what can you do to release your stress? What one thing are you going to do to stop thinking about things that are stressful? And number three is, if there's a young person in your life, what can you do to reduce the stress in their life? Because they don't have all the coping mechanisms that we do. And unless you teach them coping mechanisms, they're going to become tight-wound minds that are filled with stress, filled with tension, that lead to anxiety. We want our children to be carefree, joyful, and filled with love, compassion, and understanding. It's in your hands. It's not in the hands of the newspaper. It's not in the hands of the president. It's not in the hands of the county people. It's in the hands of you. If you're a parent, if you're a friend, give what you have to the children and the elders in your life. And with that, I'd like to say, have a beautiful day. Take a little time to relax. And this is where that old saying, chill out, is really an effective one. Or find your own saying. And I forgot one thing that was so important. When I say relax, get joyful also. So include dance, music, theater, plays, roller skating, all those things in your repertoire. And when you focus on joy and you're joyful, the stress and tension will dissolve. This is Reverend Carolyn Wilkins. I wish you peace, joy, and love as we end this program.